Hello, I'm Scotty Boman, and these are my responses to the questions other candidates answered at the Jackson-Hillsdale Gubernatorial Debate. I was unable to attend since I was teaching an astronomy class at the time. I first want to thank everyone who has stepped forward to serve our party. It takes courage to run for office, and I appreciate every libertarian willing to invest one's time and energy in advancing the cause of liberty. I wasn't planning to run this year. Between teaching physics and mathematics, serving on the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners, and my appointment to the Detroit Board of Zoning Appeals, my schedule is already full. But I saw a need. Our party has been through some difficult times, and this is a moment that calls for healing, unity, and experienced leadership. We need a gubernatorial candidate who not only understands libertarian principles of non-aggression, but also knows how to apply those principles in the real world of governing and public policy. I welcome every new activist who joins our movement. New energy makes us stronger. But the nominee for governor must bring more than enthusiasm. That person must bring experience, credibility, and a proven record of public service. I've been elected twice to Detroit's Community Advisory Council, and today I serve in positions of public trust because I've earned the confidence of the communities I represent. I'm ready to bring that same leadership to this campaign, and together we can build a stronger libertarian party and a freer Michigan. The first question was asking for me, in my own words, to describe what it means to be a libertarian. To me, being a libertarian starts with one simple idea, the non-aggression principle. We believe no one has the right to initiate force or fraud against another person. Government has a role, but it should protect our rights, not control our lives. Libertarians also believe in tolerance. You don't have to live the way I do, and I don't have to live the way you do. I may not agree with your choices, even strongly disagree, but I will defend your right to make those choices as long as you respect the equal rights of others. That philosophy brings together people because it values freedom, personal responsibility, and peaceful cooperation over coercion and division. Being a libertarian means trusting people more than politicians, and believing that a free society is the best path to prosperity, innovation, and human dignity. And next question they asked was, what, if any, changes would you propose to the Libertarian Party of Michigan state platform? Which parts would you fight the hardest to maintain as written? Overall, I think the Libertarian Party of Michigan platform is excellent. There are only a few points I would change, but one stands out. It says all public sector unions should be abolished. I disagree because libertarianism is about protecting individuals from concentrated government power. When government becomes the employer, people should still have the right to peacefully organize and defend themselves against unfair treatment. This is especially true when we live in a society where government employment has often displaced or completely replaced the free market alternatives, and so that people in certain professions find that they must ultimately be government employees. Now, that doesn't mean unions should be allowed to block accountability. As a Detroit police commissioner, I wrote a resolution that passed 9-1 to ensure police union contracts could never override civilian oversight. We should oppose abusive contracts, not the fundamental right of people to freely associate and organize. Another question we were faced with is, what are your opinion of Donald Trump's current term and Joe Biden's previous term as president? Neither major party has consistently advanced liberty. President Biden was willing to leave Ross Ulbricht in prison for creating a free market website, while Donald Trump deserves credit for finally granting him a pardon. But Trump also used U.S. military to murder Venezuelan voters in the name of drug prohibition. Biden kept us in wars of choice, while Trump started new ones. Both also left many Americans imprisoned for victimless crimes. I'll also give credit where it's due. Biden was generally more consistent in his policies, while Trump deserves praise for moving marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Biden deserves credit for respecting the decisions of states to legalize cannabis, but neither party has reduced tyranny consistently, which is why voters deserve a principled libertarian alternative. And another question we had was, beyond electoral victory, what is the goal of your campaign? Why do you feel you're the best suited to represent the party in upcoming elections? And how do you define success? Of course, I want to win, but that's not my only goal. My campaign is about growing the libertarian movement and making our party a welcoming home for people who already believe in liberty. They just don't know they're libertarians yet. I want to foster a culture where people respond to differences with tolerance and voluntary cooperation instead of immediately saying there ought to be a law. Success isn't measured only by election night. It's also measured by how much we change the conversation. When Republicans and Democrats begin adopting libertarian ideas because they're competing for our votes, we've already won part of the battle. History shows that even a relatively small libertarian vote can influence the outcome of close elections, giving us leverage far beyond our numbers. In some statewide elections, I got more votes than any other statewide minor party candidate. That's one qualification. My job is to unite our party, expand the cause of liberty, and make sure Michigan voters always have a principled libertarian choice. We're also given a list of hypothetical bills that could come across the governor's desk and asked whether you would veto or sign those bills. And so here I'm going to go through that list, and occasionally I will give some explanation, as I noticed occasionally some of the candidates did, infrequently, but here and there, at the Jackson-Hillsdale candidate forum. And here we go. I would veto a bill requiring the Ten Commandments to be placed prominently in all public schools. I would sign a bill preventing any state or local government from entering into contractual agreements with a private company which requires non-disclosure agreements. I would sign a bill which maintains the age requirement but otherwise deregulates the cannabis industry entirely, eliminating both excise taxes and cumbersome regulations to allow for this plant to be exchanged at farmer markets. However, and I'll add this, I would also sign a bill that ended age discrimination against young adults, giving anyone over 18 all of the rights and privileges of those over 21. I would veto a bill dissolving all public sector unions, as long as a government exists as a major employer. I already explained why in noting this unlibertarian plank in our platform. Now, naturally, in a purely libertarian society, government would not be a major employer, so the whole point would have been moot. I would sign a bill to ban civil asset forfeiture. I would veto a bill to ban or override instances of jury nullification, something I've done myself. I would veto a bill requiring every municipality in Michigan to have flock cameras. If all 15 counties in the Upper Peninsula have unanimously agreed that they wish to secede from Michigan and form their own state, I would respect their choice, but they would have plenty of other obstacles to overcome. You don't simply ask a governor, can we get away, separate, and the governor says, sure, and you're a separate state. Obviously, a very complicated process. I would veto a bill to outlaw sanctuary cities and sanctuary counties to ensure compliance with state and federal law. Look, we need a decentralized revolution, not a centralized federal control of municipalities. I would veto a bill requiring local law enforcement to support and aid federal law enforcement. The founders were against the standing army and for the right to form militias for a reason. I would sign a bill to completely eliminate qualified immunity for all government employees, including all law enforcement, administrative, prosecutorial, and courtroom employees, and all elected officials. Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were the proverbial tip of the iceberg. There are many, many more victims of government excess, and that includes, of course, law enforcement actions, but those actions come from somewhere. Without bad laws to enforce, law enforcement would be in fewer of these situations. I would sign a bill to commute the sentences of all persons convicted of crimes involving the sale or use of cannabis. I would sign the Defend the Guard Act. I would oppose any effort to reinstate the death penalty. And now on to those other questions. What changes would you propose to Michigan's current tax system? And a simple answer, of course, is, well, there wouldn't be one. But, of course, there is one. And by the way, if we simply got rid of taxes, we'd be in a bit of a situation because we also can't legally run up a debt. And that kind of would result in its own form of taxation. So we have to cut spending. Okay, so anyway, I support reducing and eliminating taxes wherever politically possible and legally possible, because otherwise I can have an opinion, but it isn't going to happen. One of my favorite strategies would be to keep increasing the personal exemption. That's not a tax, that's the income level you can have before getting taxed, and then you're only taxed above that, as government spending is reduced, so that those most affected by our dysfunctional economy would be the first to directly benefit from tax reductions. Once the income tax is gone, I would start going after others. But I would oppose any tax increase and support any cuts. So I'm not necessarily saying, oh, we have to do it in this order. You guys can't cut those taxes yet. No, if someone wants to cut a tax, go for it. Decentralization can play a role. Municipalities should be able to set their own strategies for reducing taxes and government intervention. If people continue to insist on some government, such as, for instance, in municipalities, like I'm in Detroit here, people love to have schools they can go to or bus services that are public and things like that. So if they continue that to want these things, we'll let them work it out at the local level. That way it is much easier for people to vote with their feet if they're not happy with having to pay the price for those types of things being public. So it works both ways. I mean, of course, we could have hundreds of laboratories of innovation throughout Michigan where local communities work on things their own way, as long as there is not as long as it isn't very excessive. And so, for instance, I support keeping the Headley limit on the property taxes and that kind of thing, so that we don't have things go out of hand at the local level. But mostly, I'm for more local autonomy and less state intervention. I think eventually those communities would discover that having high taxes is just going to have more people investing in other communities and not their own. And so it'll be a self-regulating issue eventually. I have always opposed the draft. It was a horrible form of slavery and enables the federal government to wage endless wars of choice by sending our youth to be sacrificed on the altar of the omnipotent state. I remember the carnage of Vietnam, and I am keenly aware of the hidden scars many veterans continue to be afflicted by. If it were reinstated, I would use all legal means to help would-be victims stay free of their federal slave catchers. Another question. Beyond political opportunity our ballot access offers, what initially drew you to the Libertarian Party? Well, my journey to the Libertarian Party began with a book. I opened Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal by Ayn Rand. I opened it as a Marxist, and I closed it as a laissez-faire capitalist. It completely changed how I viewed freedom, markets, and the proper role of government. Once my philosophy changed, I realized there weren't many candidates who truly reflected my beliefs. I wanted people I could vote for instead of simply voting against someone. I also wanted the fellowship of others who valued individual liberty, personal responsibility, and peaceful cooperation. That's what drew me to the Libertarian Party, back in 1988, by the way, and it's why I'm still here today. My first presidential candidate that I voted for as a Libertarian was Ron Paul. He first ran for president in 1988. And I know it's ironic that Ayn Rand had such an influence on me, because those who are really familiar with Ayn Rand know she definitely did not like the Libertarian Party. She did not like people calling themselves libertarians. I think she largely saw it as some kind of plagiarism of her philosophy, objectivism. But hey, ideas are ideas, and they're great ideas, and we can call them what we want, and we can apply them in our lives. And so I'm happy to be applying many of her ideas in my toward my view of government. So take care, and I know some of this seemed a little rusty. Like, why did Mr. Boman not make a better produced video when he stumbled? Why didn't he retake it? Well, that wouldn't be fair, because the candidates sitting over there at Jackson-Hillsdale during the candidate forum, they had to answer everything impromptu. And in fact, granted, I actually, got a bit of a preview, because I saw the questions and then I came up with answers separately, right? So I try to be a little more fair about it. And I hope that you decide to nominate me, especially if you're a delegate, because otherwise you're not going to be voting at that convention in Troy on Sunday. And if you're still, maybe you are an alternate or whatever, and you're on the fence about going to that convention, please go. Please. It's important to have participation from libertarians. And if you've been in the party a long time, you're getting tired or you're uncomfortable with some of the changes, everybody who wants to see the party go in a certain direction, it's really up to you to participate. Quitting because you don't like the way things are going is a way to guarantee things are going to go that way. So stay with us. Stay with this family. Let's convince each other to want more liberty. When you see people, your neighbor, your fellow libertarian, you don't think that person is pushing for liberty enough, if you don't think I am, get on my case about it. That's how we grow. That's how we get better. And that's how we become more free. Well, thank you for watching this video, and have a good evening, day, night. Just take care and be free.